Yes, Jenny, first of all, I guess we'll just get this out of the way. What can you tell us about Reagan's status and how she's doing after Sunday?
So I still don't know game status. She's still listed day to day from our standpoint. We have practice at 2. She has a couple different things that she has to clear before she can practice today. So we have an individual workout scheduled with her, I think at like 1:30, 1:45. So I'll know more around that point, but she has not practiced since then. I can tell you that.
Appreciate it. And I guess, Jenny, just following up, obviously, turnovers have been such an issue for this team in recent games. I know part of that is just the way that y'all play, but what have you done or what can you do to try to minimize that impact, especially again with the style that you want to play, and with players who are for the most part pretty experienced and have generally made decent decisions.
Yeah. Well, I think from a pace standpoint, that's the problem is that's not really where our turnovers are coming from. That's an easy answer to say, okay, if we keep trying to throw a full court pass and it's not there, you have a couple of those that we need to eliminate. The ones that we have to continue working on and find multiple ways to look on is our post passing, our interior passing of when to do it. I think we've really been exposed as of late, our indecisiveness on when to pass it. Sometimes we just miss it completely and we don't get it to our post. We've got to be bigger targets inside. And it's not just Reagan, but obviously, Reagan's a huge piece in terms of that. We've got to be able to get it to her hands and get it to her target. So she's got to be able to get a little bit bigger target. And we need to be better passers and we've got to pass right away. Because the second you think about it, we're playing against players that are too good. They can steal that. And you're playing against game plans that are too good that they might have two people in there. So your margin of error is really small. We've got to continue to work on that. The ones that we really have to get rid of are we're careless in our reading when we're reading back cuts or we're averaging way too many offensive fouls a game. So some of that is our positioning, some of that is unfortunate. Some of that has to do with the officiating crew and you got to adjust faster. So that's one of the things that especially experienced teams, we've got to adjust to our officiating crews faster because we're fouling at an astronomical rate too. So we're turning it over. We're putting people on the free throw line way too much. Those are areas that are, I don't know if I should call it low hanging fruit because otherwise it'd be really easy to get rid of, but they're really glaring, easy focal points that we have to start to make those adjustments. So the post passing, we got to get used to. And then we just have to get rid of the careless back cuts when they're clearly not there. We can't just keep trying to make them happen. So I don't know if I necessarily answered your question, but we've just got to get sharper. And that obviously starts with coaches and you want to let them free play a little bit. And at the same time, we got to start to turn it a little bit more because it's already the middle of January.
Appreciate it, Jenny. And yeah, you answered my question.
Sorry, very detailed.
Hey Jenny, I wanted to ask you, we saw the big deficit wins early in the season, but you've had a lot of late game situations this
Mhm.
past month. Can you talk about how the team has handled that, improved? What would you like to see better, or are you happy with what late game situations are you guys are applying to that?
It depends on the game that we're
Mhm.
talking. Um, no, I feel like in terms of our management, other than Mississippi State, we had a couple possessions here and there, but I will say we're never out of a game because of it. And so that's something that, and you can go back years and years for that. I mean, since I've been here, and we're not out of games. Even when it seems a little bit impossible to come back in, we're not out of it, because I do think they have that belief. And that's also part of why I don't call a lot of timeouts, so that you can manage it a little bit different at the end of the game. Um, but I was a little disappointed defensively in our end of game at Mississippi State for sure. And I'd like our fourth quarters overall to be better. So not just end a game last minute or two in terms of managing, but our fourth quarters have to be better. We have to be a little bit sharper on both ends. We're putting teams on the free throw line way too much, and they're shooting a high percentage. And conversely, we're not converting in those fourth quarter opportunities like we're capable of being able to do. So some of that's your conditioning, some of that's your focus, some of that's, who knows, it could be your opponent too. But that's an area that we have to be better.
I want to ask you too. I'm kind of making my senior rounds. We did Lexi last time I talked to you. I want to ask you about Liz Scott and just coming off a season where you have to sit out. Have you seen that fire in her this year because of that? To get something taken away and you get to come back, and how much has she meant to you when you arrived? Just getting to know her and seeing her career develop like it has.
Well, Liz, she's faced so much adversity, obviously from an injury standpoint. But she shows up every day and she wants to get better. She has this really unique personality that she craves getting better and really wants to do well, and yet has this really cool expectation and for her teammates, but also has this desire for them to do really well. And that's really hard. That's a hard balance for competitors, especially, like you take a year ago where she's out. It's hard to manage those emotions because you really want to be in. And so there's times that you feel like, man, we'd be so much better if I were in. And you have to manage, oh my gosh, we still won without me. That's hard. It's really challenging for a young person to manage. It's hard enough for me to to go through that. To then this year finding her way back on the floor, and then adding Reagan to that mix, and finding what is it that she's really, really good at. And I think she understands when she simplifies the game, she's really good, but she's the first one to be like, Skylar, you needed to shoot that, even if she's open, or she builds, she just builds other people up and she can see the best in other people. She's the one who's constantly all over Landry every day. She's the one who's really trying to build up Reagan where you don't think that anyone would have to do that. She's doing that. So, and it's not just a role on a team. That's just who Liz is.
Jenny, thanks so much. You have a good week, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you too.
Jen, two games ago, Zaya played 4 minutes and Renee Scott got the majority, and Renee's beginning to come on. But I was just curious about that coaching move, or was she sick, or was that a coaching move, or what's going on there?
Well, quite honestly, there have been a few games where Zaya's been in some foul trouble.
Okay,
So she's gotten some quick fouls. So that I think you're alluding to the Mississippi State game where
yeah,
she had 3 fouls in the first,
did she? Okay,
4 minutes, and she fouled right away. So now I also think we're trying to look at some things too. And Raina does have a lot of potential from a guarding standpoint. I think right now she's guarding better than she's ever guarded,
I
and
agree.
she's got size. And so there's, the guards in this league are really, really good, and they're powerful guards. And so Zaya, I don't read into Zaya playing or not playing. A lot of it is more, and even at Tennessee with Zaya, she had 2 quick fouls in that first half. And then you kind of start to find that flow. And that was a hard environment too, for her to adjust to, especially with the fouls and the way the games have been called. It's hard to allow them to grow through the foul trouble right now. Sometimes you say, okay, obviously we pull people when they have 2 fouls in the first half. But the way that the games have been called, you're going to get your third. And so we're trying to be really smart in that and allow them to play through some of it. But you've seen that with Sahara's minutes as well. When she's in foul trouble, her minutes are way down. But I don't read it into us not wanting Zaya. We want Zaya and need Zaya to play a lot. This is a guard league, that has some post play and has some physicality, but you got to have really good guards. And so Zaya's a really good guard that's getting great experience, and we just need her to get more. She just needs to kind of keep it clean. But also, that's also why Raina's getting a lot more experience right now, I think, because it always depends on what the game needs. But her defensively, that was an element and she wasn't necessarily bringing as much of. And now I think she's really focusing on that.
We talked to Porter a lot about how good the league is. We could do the same thing with you every time we interview with you. In my opinion, watching games, comparing scores, I'm just going, wow, So you're going to take on a Missouri team that's capable for sure. If Reagan, is questionable, whatever. But talk about Missouri and the matchup there, and how do you see this matchup?
Well, Missouri's almost like one of our Big 12 opponents, where they're going to run a 5-out. That's going to be a team that really scouts you. They're going to be a team that's going to expose you. They expose everybody. They're in every game. They're not indicative of what their record is. And, you look at the games that they've played have been close. They're never out. They were on the road at Alabama. They played South Carolina already. So you can't assume anything, and we don't. I've known them a long time. I've known Robin a really long time. And her teams are always really, really good, and they scout you like crazy, and they can mess with you. And so you've got to be able to come in. They always have great effort. And like I said, they're in every single game, even though their record's not maybe, they haven't won an SEC game yet, but you can't. And we've had 4 games. Who cares at this point? And there's somebody you're going to play twice. So you really got to get to know them, and you got to play them at a really high level. So we'll be ready, but that provides a challenge. The 5-out looks provide a major challenge. And we've seen that before. They make a lot of reads. They've got a couple players, I think, that are really, really good. They've got one in Judd right now who's playing extremely well. She just can score everywhere, and she can just shoot it. So they shoot the 3 really well. And that's something that we have to adjust as well. The last few games, we've had to really pack the paint for some things. Now we got to really get out and guard the perimeter.
Thanks, Jenny.
Hey, Jenny, I was going to ask you about Sky. You guys obviously have a lot of depth and everything this year, but how do you balance new weapons, extra weapons, and playing within the flow of the offense of what you want versus still wanting her to get her shots and get her looks with the player that we know that she is?
Yeah. I don't think she's necessarily gotten the shot attempts that we would like her to have. And at the same time, I feel like she's really, trying to figure out how her and Reagan can be a really good 1-2 punch, to be honest. And we need that to be an area that, when you can score in the paint and the way that we are capable of shooting the 3, it's really hard to guard. So we're just not quite there yet. We're still in kind of a hesitation learn mode. And, it's funny. Even Sherry Cole gave me some advice on that, of allowing them just to learn, because we give so many people the green light to shoot outside. And yet you got Reagan Beers inside, and you got Liz Scott inside, where we've got to be able to get them the ball. And so it's kind of balancing a free flow of everyone has opportunity, because we didn't have that a year ago, to now, yes, you have the opportunity, but also we have an advantage sometimes inside the paint. And so it's just finding that balance. And it's taken a little bit longer than I was hopeful for, but also understand why. And so I think that's something where we're still in the middle of January, and you got about 8 weeks before postseason really starts to begin. So you got to refine it. I'd like us to start learning those lessons faster. And that's Sky too. We need Skylar, and we need her to rebound the ball like she is capable. We need her to, let it fly like she's capable, and yet being able to pick apart what she's so good at is 2-on-2 games. And so we got to get her more into that 2-on-2.
When you look at some of we've talked various post games about like having looks that players have passed up that you'd like them to take. Is that you need to get her more looks, or is she sometimes getting in positions that she herself still needs to be more aggressive and kind of tap into last year's aggression a little bit?
I think it's too easy to say it's one or the other. It's obviously a combination of both, but I think there's opportunities, especially in the special situations where we're trying to go to her first and her first thoughts pass. And then there's times where, she's just trying to navigate that. I don't know. I mean, and we'll talk about it. We have all the confidence in the world in her, and there's a couple shots and, in games where you're like, man, that's usually money for her. I don't worry about those. I know it's coming back. Like, I know those are the ones. The games that I worry about are the games where she stops shooting. We need her to shoot the ball because she's got ice in her veins. She makes plays that she's not supposed to make. And so she's navigating that. Now, I will say defensively, she's light years ahead of where she's ever been. So I think that's been a huge focal point for her. So I don't ever worry about whether or not the offense comes, but we got to get her in that mindset of being able to get more of those shot attempts. And some of it is she's got to hunt for some of it because of the way that we play, because we don't play call a lot, where she can be a little bit more assertive. But I also think it's still her and Reagan really trying to figure that out.
Thanks.
Coach, you mentioned that Reagan hasn't practiced just yet with her injury and things like that, but so how can you give some insight on how that affects a team trying to prepare for a tough schedule ahead and you don't have your big centerpiece and things like that in the painted area on offense and defense and stuff like that?
Well, I think that's also why we've struggled a little bit. We were missing her for about a 6-week period in September, October as well. And so you can see we're a little bit delayed in understanding, should we shoot or should we pass, and the positioning of how we do it. So obviously it does impact just an offensive flow, especially. But I also feel like our team is one that, we've always figured it out. We'll always be resilient. We'll always understand what we need to do and how we need to do it. It just doesn't always look pretty. We'll figure it out though. And so I think it impacts you because of passing practice, right? It's hard to practice that when you're not in there. And at the same time, it's hard to practice that if you don't know if you're going to have her in the next day. It's a challenge. But we also play, 10 to 20 minutes a game without her. So we have plenty of practice without her. So I guess, yeah, it's not ideal. If, it's never ideal, but also you have to figure it out. So I don't know if we'll even know today if she'll be able to play tomorrow. That's where we're at. So I don't even know if it's a 50-50. I think there's a lot that has to happen before we can even get that answer, but we'll do whatever we can possibly do today and be prepared for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. If she's able to go, does she still kind of get the starting role or does she come off?
Yeah.
Try to slow things? Okay.
No, I a personal philosophy of mine is I never try to, if somebody's injured, you don't want that to be a reason why they're not starting because of an injury. There might be other reasons that people don't start, but I'm pretty consistent in that. I like flow. I like rotation. I like, figuring that out. And sometimes our rotations shift, but I'm never going to punish somebody because they got hurt.
Thanks, Coach.
Now her time might be limited and that might be something that we have to navigate with our athletic trainer, but I don't know that yet.
Jen, can I ask one more question? And it kind of relates to the center. I was impressed with Beatrice and, covering her coming out of high school. I was really excited when you got her, and I've been waiting for her to kind of, in my opinion, grow into her body, so to speak, as a player. But watching her post on the low post, I was thinking, man, she's worked with Reagan. and they're playing off each other. And then Liz does that too. But is she learning from those other two? Because she didn't really do that her first couple of years at OU.
Well, I
A
think
lot.
B has been so selective. B is so, she's a doctor. She's in her head and she'll sit there and she'll tell you all these different things. And, and I say that I kind of laugh because she'll look at a statistic or she'll look at this and she wants to get everybody involved. And she's, like you have to have her on your team. And at the same time, I'm like, can you just go do that? Just go on the block, post up and turn and score. And so she's been selective in it. She's had moments, but she hasn't done it for whole games. I mean, even in the last game, it's totally indicative of what she comes in, she does it right away. She did it at Tennessee. She went right at them. And then there's games where she doesn't. And so I think she's still trying to kind of find that in her game. But yeah, I think her being able to see that with a Reagan and seeing that with a Liz, it helps her understand we need this. Defensively, Beatrice is really good. And she has done an incredible job for us in terms of whether or not she has to guard inside, whether she has to guard the perimeter. She's really worked on her perimeter guarding skills. So she's been able to play with Reagan, which we didn't necessarily foresee that happening until really the non-conference started. You started to see them kind of have, some chemistry on court playing. But B's really done a nice job from a defensive standpoint to be able to put herself in that position too. Now, offensively, she is much more of a green light than she takes. And I think as her confidence continues to grow, we're going to get better because we need her.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Got time for one more, guys. Who wants the last one?
Jennie, we're gonna go off the beaten path here. I also don't know where we're going with this either.
Okay.
So we were talking to Jonas earlier, and you guys coached together at Colorado, all that stuff. And he just said there's something about a golf cart that needs to be asked of you at some point.
He threw me off a golf court when I was 7 months pregnant and I cracked my head open.
Why? How?
Well,
Disagreements and rotations? What's going on there?
it's cold in Colorado. So it was in February and I had my hands in my pocket and he missed his turn. So like any guy, instead of stopping, sorry, you're all men. That's why I said it. He turned and I flew out of the golf cart and I cracked my head open. Now I'm going into way too much detail. So it's the back of my head. And so it's small world of it. Our orthopedic doctor was our doctor when I was a player at Iowa. So I knew her. And so I called her and I was like, okay, I think I might need stitches because like my hair is like seeping. So she came in, she stitched me up. Now I still have a scar because it was an orthopedic doctor doing it. Right. And so anyway, I remember it was our pink game because I had a pink t-shirt on because like it was literally like there was blood coming down the back of and I coached the game. Nobody even knew. And I should not have. So these aren't necessarily pride points, but so then after the game, yeah, I had to kind of go take care of the rest of it. But I know Jonas went up to my husband because I didn't have time to call him because I'm like, doing all this stuff. And he's like, I'm so sorry about the accident. My husband's like, what the hell?
Like, what?
Yeah, he's like, what is it? So he comes up to me after and he's like, what happened? And I kind of like move my hair to the side and he's like, oh my God. I mean, my whole back. And if because you're not staring at the back of an assistant coach, and so I was like, no one will notice. It's fine. I'm wearing a pink t-shirt.
So these are the good memories that you guys have coaching together.
I don't know why the hell he shared it. And I don't know why I shared it with detail, but I know.
Golf cart, ask her. And I was like, can do. Well, I'll talk to her later.
I know. I will say though, I just really like coaching with him and I knew that I would. Like we had such a good time coaching. Like when you just know, and it's because we have different perspectives and we can challenge each other and then we can agree. And then he's, and then it's really fun when you get him going because then he gets like speechless and starts stuttering and all sorts of stuff. And like, but the players love him. He's just been an awesome addition. And yes, and back in the day, he threw me off a golf cart.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So is Jonas allowed to go on the radio next time or no? Jenny?
Right? I know. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. But at least he didn't share all those details. So
Right. He left it for
and
you.
I think my son's fine, but he is awkward and 12. So I don't know.
I think that's a big bump.
So maybe I can blame Jonas instead of my husband for how awkward it is.
That's great.
There
All
we go.
right. Thanks, everybody. I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yeah,
Thanks, Josh.